My sister's words sliced through the air like a blade. You can forget about getting your dress back. It was never meant for you anyway. The declaration hung in the bridal boutique before I'd even had a chance to process what was happening. 6 pairs of eyes turned to me, a mix of pity and shock in their gazes. The wedding invitation suddenly felt heavy in my purse. The invitation I'd questioned was now a witness to my own humiliation. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Time slowed as I watched my best friend Lily's fingers tighten around mine. Her warmth anchored me while something cold and hollow spread through my chest. I had stepped into this boutique hoping for a final fitting, maybe even a moment of sisterly bonding. Instead, I'd walked into an ambush. My name is Rebecca. I'm 32, and this is the story of how I reclaimed what was rightfully mine in a family that tried to steal my happiest day from me. From across the boutique, Vanessa stood perfectly poised in her designer jeans and cashmere sweater, her dark hair cascading in those signature loose waves. Her battle armor, the red lipstick she wore like war paint, curved into a smirk as she turned to face me. You know this is pointless, right? I already took the dress. Mom agrees it looks better on me anyway. Besides, your wedding's still months away, and mine's next weekend. You can just find something else. My tongue felt weighted, useless. Lily stood straighter beside me, her eyes scanning the room with unnerving calm. 3 years had passed since I'd last been in a room with my sister. 3 years since I'd packed my emotional baggage and decided to keep my distance from a family dynamic that had become my prison. I led Lily to the farthest corner of the boutique, away from their collective judgment. The velvet chair creaked beneath me, drawing unwanted attention. Lily sat beside me, hands folded neatly in her lap, but her eyes were blazing with indignation on my behalf. My mother let out a dry laugh from across the room, leaning back with fingers laced over her designer handbag. Even her friend knows she's being dramatic, she muttered, nodding toward Lily as if she weren't even present. Lily raised her chin, and something inside me hardened into resolve. I hadn't wanted to come. The message had arrived 3 days after I'd paid the final installment on my dream dress. No apology, just the curt text from Vanessa. Need to talk about the dress. Boutique, Saturday, 2 p.m. I'd almost ignored it, certain it was a mistake or another opportunity for Vanessa to find fault with my choices. But Lily had looked at me with those wise eyes and said, "We should go, Becca. Maybe there's something you need to see." So there we sat, surrounded by people who'd written their own version of my story years ago. Vanessa, the perfect daughter who always got what she wanted and made sure everyone saw her getting it. Mom, who enabled every selfish whim. Vanessa's fiancé Michael, who barely acknowledged my existence. And her 2 bridesmaids, Jessica and Taylor, who'd once been my friends too, before Vanessa decided I wasn't worth keeping in her circle. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They never asked why I kept my distance. They didn't know, or didn't care, that Vanessa had spent our entire lives taking what was mine, claiming it as her own, and making me feel insignificant for even wanting things in the first place. That when I announced my engagement to Daniel last year, Vanessa had immediately stolen my thunder by getting engaged herself, pushing her wedding date to be before mine. The air felt stale with tension and Vanessa's overly sweet perfume. I could feel my pulse throbbing in my ears. Hot, loud, humiliating. Just as I was about to stand and leave before they started another round of belittling my choices, the boutique owner, Ms. Winters, entered from the back room. She looked concerned, clutching a garment bag beneath her arm. She glanced between Vanessa and me, clearly sensing the tension but professionally maintaining her composure. The room fell silent. Everyone sat straighter. This was it. I braced myself for the final humiliation. I came expecting nothing and was prepared to leave with exactly that. Or so I thought. Because what no one in that room knew, not Vanessa, not Mom, not even me, was that my dress had a story of its own, and with one sentence, Ms. Winters would unravel everything they thought they knew. "There seems to be a misunderstanding about the custom Valentina gown," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. The room froze. Vanessa blinked. Mom turned. Ms. Winters paused, garment bag still draped over her arm. I looked at Ms. Winters, confusion washing over me. "What misunderstanding?" I whispered. But Ms. Winters wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Vanessa, whose smug expression had faltered slightly. "Ms. Rebecca Ford ordered and paid for this custom gown 6 months ago. It was designed and tailored specifically to her measurements." Ms. Winters' voice was firm, professional. "When your sister came in claiming to be you and requesting to take the dress early, our new associate didn't know any better and released it. But there's something important you should all know." I stared at Ms. Winters like she was throwing me a lifeline. Vanessa had pretended to be me? She'd stolen my dress by impersonating me? My mind reeled with the audacity, though I shouldn't have been surprised. This was classic Vanessa, taking what wasn't hers, simply because she wanted it. Ms. Winters unzipped the garment bag with careful hands, revealing the stunning ivory lace gown I'd fallen in love with half a year ago. This dress was designed specifically for Rebecca's body type and measurements. "It cannot," she emphasized, looking directly at Vanessa, "be properly altered to fit someone with different proportions in such a short time frame." My mother scoffed. "Vanessa and Rebecca are practically the same size. They've shared clothes their whole lives." Ms. Winters shook her head slightly. "With respect, ma'am, they are not the same size or shape. This gown was constructed with a specific structure to enhance Rebecca's figure. Vanessa tried it on when she came in and..." She hesitated, professional discretion battling with the need for truth. Vanessa's face flushed red. "Don't you dare," she hissed. But it was too late. One of the bridesmaids, Taylor, suddenly couldn't contain herself. "The zipper burst, Vanessa. We all saw it. The dress didn't fit you at all." The room fell silent. Vanessa's eyes widened in betrayal at Taylor, who shrank back but didn't retract her words. "It was just a faulty zipper," Vanessa insisted, but her voice had lost its edge. She knew she'd been exposed, not just for stealing my dress, but for the embarrassing truth that she couldn't fit into it. "The zipper was reinforced silk, custom-made in Italy," Ms. Winters added quietly. "It wasn't faulty. I sat perfectly still, trying to process what was happening. My sister had stolen my wedding dress, pretended to be me to get it, tried to force herself into it despite it being completely wrong for her body type, damaged it, and then had the audacity to summon me here to..." "What? Tell me I couldn't have it back? Where is my dress now?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Ms. Winters looked uncomfortable. "When the zipper broke, there was substantial damage to the seams and some of the lace panels. Your sister left it here for repairs, but it's ruined," Vanessa finished, her voice suddenly small. "I tried to fix it myself first, and I made it worse." The air in the boutique seemed to thicken. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. And for the first time in years, I saw past the perfect facade to the insecurity beneath. She'd always needed to take what was mine, to prove she was better, more deserving. But this time, she'd gone too far. "You were going to wear my ruined dress to your wedding and leave me with nothing for mine?" I asked, the pieces finally clicking into place. "That's why you called me here? To tell me my dress is destroyed and I should just accept it?" "I was going to offer to pay for a new one," Vanessa said defensively, but we both knew it was a lie. She'd expected me to fold like I always did, to accept whatever scraps she decided to throw my way. My mother stood up, already shifting into damage control mode. "Girls, please, this is ridiculous. Vanessa made a mistake, but her wedding is in a week. We need to focus on solutions." I felt a familiar pressure building in my chest. The same feeling I'd had my entire life when my needs were dismissed for Vanessa's. But this time, something was different. This time, I had evidence of her betrayal. This time, I had Lily beside me, squeezing my hand. This time, I had Ms. Winters, who had witnessed everything and couldn't be manipulated into Vanessa's version of reality. "No," I said, the word hanging in the air like a challenge. "No, Mom, this isn't about solutions for Vanessa, this is about accountability." "Becca, be reasonable," my mother started, but I cut her off. "I have been reasonable my entire life. I've stepped aside, given in, made myself smaller so Vanessa could shine. I've watched her take my achievements, my friends, my moments, and I've stayed silent because that's what good sisters do, right? My voice grew stronger with each word. But my wedding dress? The symbol of the most important day of my life? That's where I draw the line. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, but I'd seen this performance before. The waterworks always came when she was backed into a corner. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I saw how beautiful it was when you showed me the pictures. And my dress was so plain in comparison, I thought I deserved something special too. "So you stole mine instead of finding your own special dress?" I asked, incredulous. "I didn't think it would be such a big deal," Vanessa insisted, her voice taking on that familiar whine. "We're sisters. We share everything." "We don't share everything, Vanessa. You take. There's a difference." The words felt foreign in my mouth. True words I'd swallowed for years. Ms. Winters cleared her throat. "If I may, the dress is damaged, but not beyond repair. We would need to order new lace from Italy, reinforce the seams, and replace the zipper. It would take about 2 months to restore it properly." 2 months. My wedding was in 4. It was cutting it close, but it was possible. I nodded, relief washing over me. "And who's going to pay for that?" my mother demanded. "These repairs must cost a fortune." Before I could respond, Ms. Winters spoke again. "Actually, when your daughter," she nodded toward Vanessa, "brought the dress back damaged, I took the liberty of documenting everything and contacting our insurance company. Since she misrepresented herself to obtain the dress, the repairs will be covered. And," she added, looking directly at me now, "I've already started the process. The new lace was ordered 3 days ago." For the first time since entering the boutique, I felt myself breathe properly. Ms. Winters had quietly been my advocate all along, setting things right while Vanessa was still trying to manipulate the situation. "This is ridiculous," my mother huffed, gathering her purse. "Vanessa needs a dress for next weekend. What is she supposed to do now?" Ms. Winters smiled, perfectly professional. "We have several sample gowns that could be altered quickly for a rush fee. Not custom, of course, but beautiful nonetheless." Vanessa looked like she'd swallowed something sour. Sample gowns were off-the-rack dresses that had been tried on by countless brides, not the exclusive, one-of-a-kind creation she'd tried to steal from me. "I'm not wearing some second-hand dress that everyone and their mother has tried on." Vanessa snapped, her vulnerable facade vanishing instantly. Ms. Winters didn't flinch. "Then I suggest you visit other boutiques immediately. With your wedding so close, your options will be limited." The reality of her situation seemed to finally dawn on Vanessa. She had no dress for her rushed wedding. She couldn't fit into mine even if she'd succeeded in stealing it. And for once, no one was jumping to solve her problem. I stood up, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. "I'm sorry about your wedding dress situation, Vanessa, truly. But this," I gestured to the damaged gown in the garment bag, "was never yours to take." My mother looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Rebecca, you can't just leave your sister without a dress a week before her wedding." "Actually, I can," I said, my voice calm. "Vanessa made her choice when she decided to steal from me. Now she can deal with the consequences." I turned to Ms. Winters. "Thank you for everything you've done. Please keep me updated on the repairs." She nodded, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. "Of course, Ms. Ford. And may I say, when your dress is restored, it will be even more beautiful than before. We're adding some special touches to compensate for the inconvenience." I smiled back, genuinely touched by her kindness. Then I turned to Lily, who was watching me with unmistakable pride in her eyes. "Ready to go?" She nodded, standing beside me. As we walked toward the door, Vanessa called out, her voice cracking slightly. "Becca, wait! You can't just leave me like this." I paused at the door and looked back at my sister, the person who had spent a lifetime taking what was mine without a second thought, who had never considered my feelings when it benefited her to ignore them. "Yes, Vanessa, I can. Just like you've left me picking up the pieces so many times before." I didn't say it with malice or even anger. For the first time, I was simply stating a truth without cushioning it to protect her feelings. As Lily and I stepped out into the sunshine, I felt something shift inside me. The weight I'd carried for so long, the constant need to accommodate Vanessa, to make myself smaller so she could be bigger, began to lift. I hadn't just reclaimed my wedding dress, I'd reclaimed my voice. We walked in silence for a few blocks, the significance of what had just happened settling around us like a new, comfortable skin. Finally, Lily squeezed my arm and said, "I'm proud of you, Becca. That wasn't easy, but it was necessary." I nodded, surprising myself with a small laugh. You know what's strange? For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty standing up to her. I just felt right. "Because you were right," Lily said simply. "Some people will take and take until you have nothing left to give." Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's self-preservation. I thought about my sister, about the lifetime of giving in, of making myself less so she could be more. I thought about my dress, designed specifically for me, that she had tried to force herself into despite it not being made for her. It seemed like the perfect metaphor for our relationship. Vanessa trying to take what was mine, damaging it in the process and expecting me to simply accept the loss. But not this time. This time, I had stood my ground. This time, I had reclaimed what was rightfully mine. And as Lily and I continued walking, I realized that the true gift of this painful confrontation wasn't just getting my dress back. It was finding my voice and the courage to use it. My wedding would go forward as planned. My dress would be repaired, perhaps even more beautiful than before. And I would walk down the aisle not just as Daniel's bride, but as a woman who had finally learned to value herself enough to say no when necessary. As for Vanessa, she would find another dress, have her rushed wedding, and perhaps, if she was capable of it, learn something valuable from this experience. But whether she did or not was no longer my responsibility. I had my own happiness to focus on now, and that, I realized with a smile, was the most beautiful thing of all. The days following the confrontation at the boutique unfolded like the pages of a new chapter. I expected guilt to creep in, that familiar, uncomfortable companion that had shadowed me whenever I stood up for myself against Vanessa. Instead, I felt strangely peaceful, as if I'd finally unlocked a door I'd been afraid to open my entire life. Daniel noticed the change immediately. "You seem different," he said one evening as we curled up on our couch, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. "Lighter somehow." I smiled against his shoulder. "I feel different, like I've put down something heavy I didn't even realize I was carrying." His dark eyes studied my face with the thoughtful intensity I'd fallen in love with. "Tell me about the dress situation again," he requested, even though I'd already shared the story twice. But I understood. He wanted to make sure I was truly okay, that the confrontation hadn't left invisible scars. So I told him again, about Vanessa's attempt to steal my wedding dress by impersonating me, about the dress not fitting her, about Ms. Winter's quiet intervention, and most importantly, about my decision to finally hold my sister accountable. I kept waiting to feel bad about it, I confessed, watching the evening shadows play across our living room wall. But I don't. I just feel relieved. Daniel nodded, unsurprised. "You've spent your entire life feeling responsible for Vanessa's happiness. That's a burden you were never meant to carry." He was right, of course. From childhood, I'd been the peacekeeper, the one who gave in, the one who smoothed things over when Vanessa's demands became too much. It was easier that way, or so I'd convinced myself. Let Vanessa have what she wanted, and the storms would pass quickly. Except they never really passed. They just gathered strength for the next time she decided she deserved something that was mine. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, interrupting my thoughts. My mother's name flashed on the screen, and I felt that old instinctive tightening in my chest, the Pavlovian response to her disapproval. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But that would be avoidance, not growth. "I should take this," I said to Daniel, who squeezed my hand in silent support. "Hello, Mom," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Rebecca." Her tone was clipped, professional. The voice she used when she was deeply displeased but trying to maintain control. "We need to discuss what happened yesterday." I closed my eyes, centering myself. "I agree, it was quite a situation." "Your sister is devastated." she continued, as if I hadn't spoken. She's been crying all day. Her wedding is in 7 days, and she has no dress. I bit back the immediate apology that rose to my lips, the automatic response I'd been conditioned to give whenever Vanessa was upset. That's unfortunate, I said instead, but it was her choice to take my dress without permission. Actions have consequences. The silence on the other end of the line was so profound I briefly wondered if the call had dropped. Then I heard my mother exhale sharply. I raised you better than this, Rebecca. Family supports family. Vanessa made a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Mom, I interrupted, surprising both of us. A mistake is accidental. What Vanessa did was deliberate. She impersonated me to take something that wasn't hers. She damaged my wedding dress trying to force it to fit her. And then she called me to the boutique to tell me I couldn't have it back. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern of behavior you've enabled her entire life. Another silence, this one vibrating with tension. I could almost see my mother's expression, the tightening around her eyes, the slight downturn of her mouth. I don't recognize who you've become, she finally said, her voice tight with disapproval. The Rebecca I raised would never abandon her sister in her time of need. The words were designed to wound, to push me back into the familiar role of compliance. 6 months ago they might have worked. But not today. The Rebecca you raised, I said carefully, deserves the same consideration and respect you've always given Vanessa. I'm not abandoning her. I'm simply refusing to rescue her from consequences she brought on herself. So that's it? You won't help at all? The accusation hung in the air between us. I sighed, feeling suddenly tired. What exactly would you like me to do, Mom? Give her my repaired dress when it's ready and find something else for myself? Push my wedding back so hers can have the spotlight? Tell me what would be enough this time. She didn't answer immediately, which told me everything. Nothing would be enough. The pattern would continue. Vanessa taking, me giving, and the cycle starting again with the next thing she decided she wanted. I thought you loved your sister, my mother finally said, her voice softer now, slipping into the guilt tactics that had always worked before. I do love Vanessa, I replied honestly. But loving her doesn't mean I have to let her take everything that matters to me. It doesn't mean I have to make myself smaller so she can feel bigger. The line went quiet again. Then, surprisingly, my mother's voice changed. Not dramatically, but just enough for me to notice. A slight softening, a hint of something I rarely heard directed at me. Respect, perhaps. What do you suggest, then? The question caught me off guard. My mother had never asked for my opinion on how to handle Vanessa's crises before. I think Vanessa needs to solve this problem herself, I said after a moment's consideration. She's 29 years old, Mom. She's capable of finding another dress. It might not be her dream gown, but that's the reality she created. I heard the soft tap of my mother's fingernails against a hard surface. Her thinking sound. You know she'll blame you if her wedding isn't perfect, she warned. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. She probably will, but that doesn't make it true. After a few more exchanges, we ended the call with a tentative truce. No promises were made, no dramatic reconciliations achieved. But something had shifted. For perhaps the first time, I'd spoken to my mother as an equal, not as the perpetual peacekeeper of the family. Daniel was watching me with quiet pride when I put my phone down. You okay? He asked. I nodded, settling back against him. I think I actually am. The week leading up to Vanessa's wedding passed in relative silence. No further calls from my mother, no tearful appeals from my sister. I focused on my work, on the life Daniel and I were building together, and on the quiet joy of planning our own wedding without the shadow of Vanessa's demands looming over every decision. Ms. Winters called twice with updates on my dress. The new lace had arrived from Italy, more beautiful than the original. The repairs were proceeding smoothly. There might even be time for some special embellishments, if I was interested. I'd love that, I told her, genuine excitement bubbling up at the thought of seeing my restored gown. Thank you for everything you've done. It's my pleasure, Rebecca, she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Some brides I remember long after they've said their vows. You're one of them. On the morning of Vanessa's wedding, I woke to a text message from my cousin Emma. Are you coming today? I stared at the phone, uncertain how to respond. I hadn't received an actual invitation to the wedding. just the knowledge that it was happening, courtesy of family gossip channels. After our confrontation, I'd assumed I was no longer welcome. "Was I invited?" I texted back. 3 dots appeared as Emma typed her response. "V says you're still on the guest list. Your RSVP was never canceled." Interesting. I showed the message to Daniel, who raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Are you going to go?" he asked, careful to keep his tone neutral. I considered the question. Part of me wanted to stay home to protect the newfound peace I'd cultivated. But another part was curious, not about the wedding itself, but about what it might mean to attend as this new version of myself, the Rebecca who could set boundaries, who could love her sister without diminishing herself in the process. "I think I will," I decided, but not to fix anything or to make Vanessa feel better, just to be present on my own terms. Daniel nodded, understanding instantly. "I'll go with you." Moral support. 2 hours later, we were dressed and driving to the small chapel where Vanessa and Michael would exchange their vows. My stomach fluttered with nervous energy as we parked, but it wasn't the familiar anxiety that usually accompanied family gatherings. It was something else. Anticipation, perhaps. A readiness to write a new chapter in our complicated sisterhood. The chapel was decorated simply but elegantly. White roses and greenery lining the aisle, soft music playing as guests found their seats. We slipped in quietly, choosing a spot near the back. I scanned the room, noting the sparse attendance. Vanessa had always talked about having a grand wedding with hundreds of guests. This intimate gathering seemed uncharacteristically modest. My mother spotted us almost immediately. She paused in her conversation with an elderly aunt, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she excused herself and made her way to our pew. "Rebecca. Daniel." Her greeting was formal but not cold. "I'm glad you came." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely meaning it. "How is Vanessa doing?" A shadow crossed my mother's face. "She's adjusting. It hasn't been an easy week." I nodded, understanding the unspoken message. Vanessa hadn't found her perfect replacement dress. She was probably furious, probably still blaming me. But she was going through with the wedding anyway. "I'm sure she'll be beautiful," I said, and meant that too. Vanessa had always been stunning, regardless of what she wore. My mother studied my face, perhaps searching for signs of sarcasm or hidden agenda. Finding none, she seemed to relax slightly. She had to settle for an off-the-rack gown, she admitted, lowering her voice as if sharing a scandalous secret. "It's lovely, but not what she had envisioned." "Sometimes the unexpected choices turn out to be the best ones," Daniel offered, his hand warm against mine. My mother's gaze shifted to him, and for a brief moment I saw a flash of genuine affection in her eyes. She'd always liked Daniel, even if she rarely showed it. "Yes," she agreed quietly. "Sometimes they do." The music changed, signaling the ceremony was about to begin. My mother returned to her seat in the front row, and Daniel and I settled in to witness my sister's wedding day. Michael entered from a side door, taking his place at the altar. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, if a bit nervous. The bridesmaids followed, walking down the aisle in dusty rose gowns. Not the emerald green Vanessa had originally planned, I noted with surprise. Another last-minute change, perhaps. Then the bridal march began, and all eyes turned to the back of the chapel. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, her arm linked with our father's. And despite everything, my breath caught at the sight of her. She was radiant. The dress she wore wasn't the elaborate, princess-style gown she'd tried to steal from me. It was simpler, more streamlined, an elegant sheath of ivory satin that skimmed her curves and pooled slightly at her feet. Her dark hair was swept up in a sophisticated chignon, tiny pearls woven throughout. She looked elegant, timeless, and completely unlike the Vanessa I'd grown up with. She looked like herself, not the performance of herself she usually put on, not the version that needed to outshine everyone else in the room. Just Vanessa, vulnerable and real and beautiful in her own right. As she passed our pew, her eyes met mine briefly. I expected coldness, perhaps even anger. Instead, I saw something that looked almost like relief. A slight nod of acknowledgement passed between us before she continued toward her waiting groom. The ceremony was brief but touching. Vanessa and Michael exchanged traditional vows, their voices clear and steady in the hushed chapel. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in applause and cheers. I clapped too, surprised by the genuine happiness I felt for my sister. Not because she'd won or achieved something I hadn't, but because she seemed, in this moment at least, to have found something real. The reception was held in the garden adjacent to the chapel, another departure from Vanessa's original plans for a grand ballroom affair. Fairy lights twinkled in the trees as twilight descended, creating a magical atmosphere that felt intimate and warm. Daniel and I mingled with extended family, accepting congratulations on our own upcoming wedding with genuine smiles. I was conscious of Vanessa's gaze finding me occasionally across the garden, but she made no move to approach. That was fine. We would talk if she was ready. It was my father who finally broke the ice, appearing at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne as Daniel was deep in conversation with an uncle about baseball statistics. "Thought you might like a drink," he said, offering me one of the glasses. I accepted it with a smile. "Thank you." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the celebration unfold. My father had always been the quieter presence in our family dynamic, not absent, exactly, but overshadowed by my mother's more forceful personality and Vanessa's constant demands for attention. "Your sister's dress turned out nice," he commented, his tone casual but his eyes watchful. I nodded. "It did. It suits her." He took a sip of his champagne. "Not what she originally wanted, from what I understand." "No," I agreed, wondering where this conversation was heading. "But sometimes we need to adjust our expectations." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Wise words." He paused, then added, "I heard about what happened with your dress." I tensed slightly, unsure whether I was about to receive another lecture about family loyalty. But my father surprised me. "I'm proud of you, Rebecca," he said quietly, "for standing your ground." The words hung in the air between us, simple but profound. I couldn't remember the last time my father had expressed pride in me specifically. It had always been the girls or my daughters. Vanessa and I grouped together as a unit, despite our differences. "Thank you, Dad," I managed, my throat suddenly tight with unexpected emotion. "That means a lot." He nodded, his eyes drifting to where Vanessa was laughing with her new husband. "She's always been the storm in our family," he observed. "And you've always been the shelter." I think we all took that for granted. The insight startled me. I'd never heard my father speak so directly about the family dynamic before. "I didn't mind being the shelter," I said after a moment, "but I think I needed to learn that I could be more than that." He turned back to me, his expression softening. "You've always been more than that, Rebecca. Some of us just weren't paying close enough attention." Before I could respond, a movement caught my eye. Vanessa was approaching us, her satin dress gleaming in the fairy lights. My father squeezed my arm gently and stepped away, leaving me to face my sister alone for the first time since the boutique confrontation. She stopped a few feet away, uncertainty written across her usually confident features. "Hi," she said simply. "Hi," I echoed. "Congratulations, Vanessa." It was a beautiful ceremony. She nodded, absently touching one of the pearl pins in her hair. "Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," I admitted honestly. A small smile flickered across her face, gone almost before I could register it. "Your dress?" she began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Will it be fixed in time for your wedding?" "Ms. Winters thinks so. The repairs are going well." Vanessa nodded again, her gaze dropping to the champagne glass in her hand. "Good. That's good." We stood in awkward silence for a moment, years of complicated history stretching between us like an invisible thread, frayed in places, knotted in others, but still connecting us. "I like your dress," I offered finally. "It's really beautiful on you." She looked up, surprise flashing in her eyes. "Do you really think so?" It was literally the only decent option I could find on such short notice. I had to settle. The old Vanessa would have said this with bitterness, with accusation. But something in her tone was different now. A rueful acknowledgement, perhaps even a touch of humor at her own expense. Sometimes the things we settle for turn out to be exactly what we needed, I said. Vanessa's eyes met mine, and for the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt like she was really seeing me, not as competition, not as the sister who always gave in, but simply as Rebecca. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, the words rushing out as if she feared she might lose her nerve. "About the dress, about everything, really. I haven't been a good sister to you." The admission hung in the air between us, fragile and unexpected. I could have brushed it aside with an easy forgiveness, could have fallen back into our old pattern of glossing over hurts for the sake of false peace, but that wouldn't serve either of us. "No," I agreed quietly. "You haven't. And I haven't been good to myself by allowing it for so long." She flinched slightly but didn't argue. "I think I've always been jealous of you," she confessed, her voice barely audible above the music and laughter surrounding us. "You always seemed so complete, like you knew who you were." I never felt that way. The revelation stunned me. Vanessa, jealous of me? It seemed impossible. She had always been the confident one, the ambitious one, the one who took up all the oxygen in every room. "I never knew that," I said honestly. She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "Of course you didn't. I made sure of it." She glanced around at her modest wedding reception, so different from the extravagant event she'd always described. "But you know what? This turned out better than what I'd planned. Simpler, more real. Like her dress, I thought. Like her, in this moment." "I'm glad," I told her, and meant it. Vanessa hesitated, then asked, "Do you think maybe we could try again? As sisters, I mean. Not like before, but something new?" The question held no demands, no manipulation, just a genuine, tentative hope. I thought about all the years of competition and hurt, of giving in and building resentment. But I also thought about the possibility of something different, a relationship built on mutual respect rather than old patterns. "I'd like that," I said finally. "It won't be easy. We have a lot of history to work through." She nodded, understanding the boundaries implicit in my response. "One step at a time? One step at a time." I agreed. As if on cue, Michael appeared at Vanessa's side, gently claiming his new wife for their first dance. She smiled at him, then turned back to me. "Thank you for coming, Becca. It means more than you know." As I watched her move onto the dance floor, graceful in her unexpectedly perfect dress, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but the possibility of it. The space for something new to grow. Daniel found me a moment later, his hand warm against the small of my back. "Everything okay?" he asked, nodding toward where Vanessa and Michael swayed to the music. I leaned into him, drawing strength from his steady presence. "I think it might be," I replied, not perfect, but moving in the right direction. As the evening continued around us, music playing, couples dancing, celebrations in full swing, I realized something profound. The confrontation at the boutique hadn't just been about a wedding dress. It had been the catalyst for a different kind of transformation, one that allowed both Vanessa and me to step out of the roles we'd been playing our entire lives and discover who we might become instead. My sister had stolen my wedding dress and in doing so had inadvertently given me something far more valuable, the courage to reclaim myself. 3 weeks after Vanessa's wedding, I stood in Ms. Winter's boutique, hardly daring to breathe as she carefully unzipped the garment bag that contained my restored wedding dress. The anticipation that hummed through me wasn't tinged with anxiety or doubt, just pure, undiluted excitement. This moment felt like the culmination of a journey that had begun long before the dress was damaged, perhaps even before it was created. "Ready?" Ms. Winters asked, her eyes twinkling with barely contained delight. I nodded, unable to form words. Beside me, Lily squeezed my hand, her presence a constant support through everything. My mother stood a few steps back, her expression a careful neutral that nevertheless couldn't quite hide her curiosity. Yes, my mother had come. The invitation had been extended impulsively during one of our cautiously cordial phone conversations following Vanessa's wedding. To my surprise, she had accepted without hesitation. "I'd like to see it," she'd said simply. "If that's all right with you." The olive branch wasn't exactly flourishing yet, but it had taken root. Small steps, as Vanessa and I had agreed. One day at a time. Ms. Winters pulled back the protective covering with a theatrical flourish, and the collective gasp that filled the room was entirely genuine. My dress, my beautiful restored dress, hung before us, transformed from something broken into something transcendent. The delicate ivory lace that had been damaged beyond recognition now cascaded down the bodice in an intricate pattern that seemed to tell a story of its own. Tiny crystals had been sewn into the fabric, catching the light with every movement. The silhouette remained the same, the flowing A-line I had fallen in love with, designed to complement my curves rather than constrain them, but there was something undeniably different about it now. Something stronger. I began, but words failed me. How could I describe what I was seeing? It wasn't just a dress anymore. It was a testament to resilience, to the beauty that can emerge from brokenness when skilled hands and patient hearts commit to restoration. "It's you," Ms. Winters finished for me, her voice soft with understanding. Elegant, resilient, and more beautiful for having weathered the storm. Lily wiped away a tear beside me, not even attempting to maintain her usual composure. "It's absolutely stunning, Becca." I turned to look at my mother, curious about her reaction. She stood perfectly still, her hand pressed lightly against her throat in a gesture I recognized from childhood, the way she expressed genuine emotion when words wouldn't come. "What do you think, Mom?" I asked, surprised by how much her opinion still mattered to me, despite everything. She stepped forward slowly, reaching out a tentative hand to touch the lace. "It's extraordinary," she said, her voice catching slightly. "So much more than the original design." Ms. Winters beamed at the praise. "That was exactly our intention. When something precious is damaged, we have two choices: simply repair it to its former state, or transform it into something even more magnificent. We chose the latter." My mother's eyes met mine over the dress, and I saw something shift in her expression, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even understanding. "Yes," she said quietly. "Sometimes that's the better choice." The moment stretched between us, weighted with unspoken acknowledgments. Then Ms. Winters cleared her throat gently. "Would you like to try it on, Rebecca? The final alterations are complete. This is exactly how it will look on your wedding day." I nodded eagerly, following her to the spacious fitting room where I'd first said yes to this dress 6 months ago. As she helped me into the gown, careful not to disturb my hair or makeup, I marveled at how perfectly it fit, as if it had been created from my very essence, rather than mere measurements on a page. When I stepped out to the viewing area where Lily and my mother waited, the look on their faces told me everything I needed to know. "Oh, Rebecca," my mother whispered, her eyes suspiciously bright. Lily was less restrained. "You look absolutely breathtaking," she declared, clapping her hands together in delight. Ms. Winters guided me to the three-way mirror, and for the first time, I saw myself as I would appear on my wedding day. The woman who gazed back at me was radiant, not just because of the stunning gown that embraced her figure, but because of the quiet confidence that seemed to emanate from within her. I'd always been told I was pretty in that understated way that implied I would never quite measure up to Vanessa's more dramatic beauty. But the woman in the mirror wasn't understated at all. She was magnificent, strong and soft simultaneously, with a presence that commanded attention not through demand but through authentic self-possession. "This is who you've always been," Lily said softly, coming to stand behind me. "The rest of us are just catching up." I smiled at her reflection, gratitude welling up inside me for her unwavering friendship. Then my eyes shifted to my mother, who stood a few feet away, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Mom?" I asked. "Are you okay?" She startled slightly, as if pulled from deep thought. "Yes," she said, then more firmly, "yes. I was just thinking about your grandmother." My mother. This unexpected turn surprised me. My maternal grandmother had died when I was very young, and my mother rarely spoke of her. "What about her?" I asked carefully. My mother moved closer, her reflection joining mine and Lily's in the mirror. She used to tell me that true beauty reveals itself in moments of transformation. I never really understood what she meant until now. She reached out, gently adjusting one of the crystal-adorned lace panels on my shoulder. You remind me of her today. Not in looks, but in spirit. She was quiet but unshakable. Like you. The comparison stunned me. My mother had always held Vanessa up as the one who took after her side of the family. Vibrant, charismatic, the natural center of attention. To be compared to her own mother, clearly someone she had deeply respected, felt like a revelation. I didn't know that, I said simply. There's a lot we haven't shared, my mother acknowledged, her hand still resting lightly on my shoulder. Perhaps it's time to change that. Ms. Winters, sensing the personal nature of our exchange, discreetly excused herself to attend to another client. Lily followed her cue, murmuring something about needing to make a phone call. Left alone with my mother, I turned to face her directly. I'd like that, I said, but I need you to understand something first. She nodded, her expression open in a way I rarely witnessed. Go on. I'm not going back to how things were before, I told her, my voice gentle but firm. I love you, and I love Vanessa. But I've spent too long making myself smaller to accommodate the dynamics in our family. I can't do that anymore. I expected resistance, perhaps even offense. Instead, my mother surprised me with a small, sad smile. I know, she said, and you shouldn't have to. I've been doing some thinking since Vanessa's wedding, about the patterns we've fallen into, about my role in maintaining them. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I didn't protect you the way I should have. I favored Vanessa because she demanded it, and you never demanded anything. The admission hung in the air between us, both painful and healing in its honesty. I'm not asking for favoritism now, I clarified, just equality. Respect. You deserve that and more, my mother said, reaching for my hand. And I'd like the chance to do better, if you'll let me. I squeezed her fingers, feeling the delicate bones beneath her skin. So familiar and yet somehow new, as if I were truly seeing her for the first time. One day at a time, I echoed the phrase that had become something of a mantra in my reconciliation with Vanessa. My mother nodded, understanding the boundary and accepting it. One day at a time, when Daniel and I exchanged vows 6 weeks later, the day was everything I had dreamed it would be, and nothing like I had imagined. The ceremony took place in the garden of his parents' home, with fairy lights strung through the ancient oak trees and white roses scattered along the aisle I walked down on my father's arm. My dress, with its story of destruction and beautiful rebirth, moved with me like a second skin as I approached the man who had stood beside me through every step of my journey towards self-reclamation. Daniel's eyes widened when he saw me, and the love reflected in them was so pure, so complete, that it momentarily took my breath away. You look like a vision, he whispered when I reached him, his voice carrying just far enough for me to hear. I feel like myself, I replied. Finally, completely myself. His smile deepened with understanding, and I knew with absolute certainty that this moment, this man, this version of me was exactly right. Vanessa stood among my bridesmaids, our careful rebuilding of trust having progressed enough for me to include her in the wedding party. She had accepted the invitation with genuine gratitude, and throughout the planning process, she had surprised me by respecting every boundary I set. No suggestions for changes, no attempts to center herself, just quiet support and occasional moments of authentic connection. As we exchanged our vows, promises of partnership, respect, and unwavering support through whatever life might bring, I was acutely aware of the lessons that had brought me to this altar. The painful wisdom of learning to stand my ground, the liberating joy of reclaiming my voice, the healing power of boundaries, properly set and maintained. When Daniel slipped the ring onto my finger, a simple band of platinum that echoed the one I placed on his hand moments later, I felt a sense of completion that went beyond the ceremony itself. This wasn't just the beginning of our marriage. It was the culmination of my journey back to myself. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, music, and the kind of genuine joy that can't be manufactured or forced. I danced with my father, who whispered how proud he was of the woman I had become. I shared champagne with Lily, who had been my rock through every storm. I even had a moment with Vanessa, both of us swaying slightly to the music as the evening wound down. "Thank you," she said suddenly, her voice quiet beneath the melody. "For including me today?" I asked, assuming she meant the bridesmaid invitation. She shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "For not giving me what I wanted when I tried to take your dress?" I blinked in surprise. "That's an unusual thing to be thankful for." "Maybe," she acknowledged. "But if you had given in like you always did before, if you had just found another dress and let me have yours, nothing would have changed. I would have kept taking, and you would have kept giving until there was nothing left of you to give." The insight caught me off guard, not just because it was true, but because it had come from Vanessa herself. "When did you get so wise?" I teased gently. She laughed, the sound lighter than I remembered. "Around the same time, I realized that the dress I settled for at my wedding was actually perfect for me, that maybe all the things I'd been chasing weren't what I really needed after all." I studied my sister's face, noting the subtle changes there. The sharp edges of her ambition had softened somewhat, replaced by something that looked remarkably like contentment. "Are you happy, Vanessa?" I asked, genuinely curious. She considered the question with uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. "I'm learning to be," she said finally. "It's different than I expected, quieter, but yes, I think I am." As the evening continued, I found myself observing the gathering from a slight distance, taking mental photographs of moments I wanted to preserve forever. Daniel laughing with his brothers near the cake table, my parents dancing slowly to a song from their own wedding day, Lily's daughter scattering rose petals across the dance floor in a game of her own invention. Ms. Winters had come as well, my personal invitation extended in gratitude for her role in not just saving my dress, but in helping me stand firm when it would have been easier to give way. She approached me now, elegant in a dove-gray dress that complemented her silver hair. "The most beautiful bride I've ever dressed," she declared, her eyes twinkling. "And I've dressed quite a few," I laughed, embracing her warmly. "Only because you worked magic on my gown." She pulled back, her expression turning serious. "The dress is exquisite, certainly. But that's not what makes you radiant today, Rebecca. It's the woman wearing it, the one who learned to value herself enough to say no when necessary, and yes when it matters most." Her words echoed through me, resonating with a truth I had only recently come to understand, that sometimes the greatest act of love, both for ourselves and for others, is setting the boundaries that allow authentic relationships to flourish. As the night drew to a close, Daniel and I slipped away from the celebration, changing into more comfortable clothes for the short drive to the hotel where we would spend our first night as husband and wife. My wedding dress, carefully preserved once more in its garment bag, would be taken to our home by Lily while we honeymooned in Greece. "Happy?" Daniel asked as we drove through the quiet streets, the windows down to let in the warm summer air. I turned to look at him, this man who had never asked me to be less than I was, who had encouraged me to claim my space in the world without apology. "Incredibly," I answered truthfully. "But it's more than happiness, it's wholeness." He reached across the console to take my hand, understanding as he always did. "That's what I want for you. For us. Not just the easy joy of good moments, but the deeper satisfaction of living authentically, whatever comes." "Whatever comes," I echoed, squeezing his fingers. Later that night, as we stood on the balcony of our hotel suite watching the city lights shimmer below us, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. Not just the drama with the wedding dress, though that had been the catalyst, but the longer path of learning to honor my own worth in a world that had often asked me to diminish it. I thought about the dress, transformed from something damaged into something even more beautiful than before. About my relationship with Vanessa, slowly evolving from toxic competition into something that might, with time and care, become genuine sisterhood. About my parents, especially my mother, making halting but sincere efforts to see me clearly for perhaps the first time. Most of all, I thought about myself. The woman who had walked into that bridal boutique months ago, ready to accept whatever scraps of consideration her family might offer, and the woman who stood here now, married to a man who cherished her completeness, surrounded by relationships that were changing because she had finally changed herself. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been painful confrontations, difficult boundaries to establish, old patterns to break. But standing here now, watching the stars emerge above the city skyline, with Daniel's arm warm around my waist, I knew with bone-deep certainty that it had been worth every challenging step, because this was the truth I had finally embraced. We teach others how to treat us by what we accept, what we refuse, and what we honor in ourselves. When I had refused to let my wedding dress, and by extension my voice, my choices, my very self, be taken from me, I had begun a transformation far more significant than what Ms. Winters had achieved with needle and thread. I had reclaimed not just a dress, but my place in my own life story. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked softly, his breath warm against my hair. I leaned back against him, feeling the solid strength of his chest against my shoulders. About how sometimes the things that seem like ending points are actually beginnings. How standing up for myself about my wedding dress wasn't the end of my relationship with my family, but the start of a healthier one. He nodded, his chin brushing the top of my head. "Sometimes you have to break the old patterns before you can create new ones." "Exactly," I agreed. "And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is to say no to what diminishes you." We stood there a while longer, wrapped in comfortable silence and each other's arms, watching the night deepen around us. Tomorrow, we would leave for Greece, for sandy beaches and ancient ruins, and the beginning of our shared life together. But tonight, in this quiet moment of reflection, I savored the journey that had brought me here, to this place of hard-won peace, of boundaries lovingly maintained, of authenticity fiercely protected. My sister had stolen my wedding dress, and in doing so, had inadvertently given me the opportunity to reclaim something far more precious, the courage to be fully, unapologetically myself, not just on my wedding day, but every day that followed. And that, I realized as Daniel and I finally turned to go inside, was the most beautiful gift of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.